Hey guys, Kyle Kovats here with Kovats Multifamily. Making a video today discussing the 18 questions that I ask general partners before investing into their syndicate. Now, when I say syndicate, what does syndicate mean? A syndicate is just a very large partnership. So I, in particular, invest in multifamily syndicates, so apartment complexes and things of that sort. And, over the years, I have personally invested over $5 million worth of personal capital into multifamily syndicates. So I've developed a list of questions that I ask the general partners who are putting together the deal before I will actually hand off my money to them. The reason for making this video is over the past couple weeks, I've actually spoken with some people who have invested in some deals where unfortunately they're literally going to lose, I should say, every single dime that they invested in that deal, which is really a shame. And with that being said, there are, in my opinion, some very simplistic questions that you can ask general partners to kind of vet out these deals before ultimately parting with your capital and entrusting these general partners with it. Over the past few years, when I say few years, over the past decade or so, everything's just been going up, 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 that whether you were a good operator or a bad operator, you were able to make your limited partners money. That's not the case anymore. Interest rates have gone up. Deals are facing pressure. Operations are really, really important now. Raising rents, raising revenue, lowering expenses. If you're not doing those things as an operator, you could be losing, your investors' money. And if you really were just buying with the whole business plan being that prices are going up, we're in a market right now where, it's very interest rate sensitive and prices are affected by that. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about the 18 questions that I ask a general partner before investing into their deal as a limited partner myself. So number one, the first question I ask, and this is going to sound very simplistic, I ask them, do you even know the partners who you're taking down this deal with? So again, let's give the example. I'm the limited partner. I'm a passive investor. I'm just handing off my money to you for you to buy this deal. I want to make sure you know who you're doing the deal with. Now, you might be saying to yourself, that's crazy. There's no way that, somebody who's a general partner who's reaching out to me for money wouldn't know who they're doing a deal with. You would be shocked. And the reason I say you would be shocked is because people will always reach out to me randomly, people I've never met before, and say, hey, we have an apartment complex under contract. We know that you like investing in Texas. Would you be interested in helping us raise equity for this deal? Now, for me, the answer is always no. And the reason the answer is always no is because I have a set group of partners who I always transact with and always do deals with. We understand each other's roles. We delegate each other's roles to one another. We have, team cohesion and things like that. We've operated well together, and we've done so for years. Some random guy who, heard of my name or, knows that I buy properties down in, Texas, let's say, hypothetically, reached out to me. I'm not just going to do a deal with this person just to raise equity for them. I need to understand how they operate. I need to understand how they work. I'm not just going to, raise equity and do deals for anybody. I want to make sure that anybody I am doing a deal with, I know, I like, I trust, have operated really with them before. So I bring this up because there's people out there I know who are like, yeah, I just met these guys, I just met these gals, I just met these people, and I raise equity for them. Well, that's a huge red flag to me. If I have somebody ever just say to me, I raise equity for them, okay, you're just raising equity for them, or do you have any clue how they kind of operate? Have you operated with them? Do you have any experience with them? If the answer is no, I'm probably not even going to attend the webinar that they're putting on when they go to raise equity for that deal. That's number one. The second question, and I have these all on my iPhone here, my notes pad. Number two, are you even investing your own money into the deal? And if so, how much? So I want to make sure this person who's hitting me up for money that wants me to invest as a passive investor, as a limited partner into their syndicate deal, they have skin in the game as well. I think that's important. If somebody's just raising money and they're hoping to collect fees and things of that sort, and they're not putting their own, money where their mouth is, so to say, that's a red flag to me. Now, I also understand that there could be times where this group's really cooking, right? This syndicate group's really cooking. They're doing 5 deals a year, 6 deals a year because they're just coming across so many good deals. And maybe they themselves, their liquidity is being a little bit tapped. And maybe therefore they're, putting, I don't know, let's say the minimum investment amount in the deal. Let's say that's $100,000. Well, if you're investing the minimum investment amount along with the other limited partners, what's the reason behind that? I'd at least want to have some sort of explanation. So, and you might think it's intrusive to ask them how much of their own personal money are they putting into the deal. It's not intrusive. You should always ask that question. Number 3 here, what type of loan are you taking out when you're buying this deal? Are you taking out a bridge loan? Or are you taking out more of a fixed rate, longer term loan? So in commercial real estate, the two main types of loans that you see out there for the most part are fixed rate loans that are on either, usually around a 10 or a 12-year term, but a 30-year amortization schedule. What that means, the loan term is only, let's say, 10 years, but you're paying that loan back as if the money was borrowed for 30. So this way, the monthly payments that are being made is based off a 30-year payment schedule. The thing with fixed rate loans, though, in the commercial space is that there are prepayment penalties. So if that property is sold after, let's say, 3 years, there could be a prepayment penalty in excess of $1 million. As an example, we sold one of our properties in Phoenix back in November of 2022. We bought that deal in February of 2019. Our prepayment penalty on that deal was over $1 million. Now, for us and our investors, it made sense. Why? Because we bought the property for about $11.6 million and we sold it for $25 million. So we made a lot of money on that deal. Our investors basically, whatever their investment amount was, multiply it times 4, and that's what the return was. It was way above what our projected returns were. And again, to be fully transparent here, a lot of that had to do with the market. The market was insane. We operated it well. We kept occupancy high. We raised rents, raised revenue, controlled expenses, did all that. But look, anybody who tells you that, they're going to get you a 4x return in 3.5 years just because of them, they're lying to you. And that should be a red flag if they even try to say that to you. But number 1, the fixed rate loan, right? Fixed rate loan, there's no interest rate exposure. You know what it is, but there is a risk of that prepayment penalty if the deal does sell prior to loan maturity. The other type of loan, though, the bridge loan, there is interest rate exposure. There is risk there. Now, while there is no prepayment penalty on a bridge loan, the negative is it's floating rate debt, which means, depending upon what interest rates are, that interest rate on that loan can go up, it can go down. There's volatility in that regard. If you're investing in a deal that is being bought on a bridge loan, on a floating rate loan, make sure to mitigate that risk exposure that the general partner is taking down that deal and buying that deal that you're investing in. They've bought rate caps. This way, like hypothetically, a typical, not typical today, but like let's say a spread a year ago was 350 over SOFR, which SOFR kind of tracks with the Fed funds. Well, a year plus ago, like let's say January of 2022, Fed funds was near 0, right? Now, Fed funds is around like, 5.25 or so. So if you first bought that deal and they made the assumption that it was going to be, basically a 3.5% interest rate over these 3 years that they were doing this deal, and then Fed funds and, SOFR in general jumps to, let's say, 5%. Well, over the course of a year, your interest rate went from, 3.5% to 8.5%. That changes a lot on how that deal looks. And one of the big foreclosures that recently went through that a lot of people read about in the Wall Street Journal was that 2,000 plus unit portfolio in Houston by, I think the group's name was Apple's Way Investment. Those properties were all on bridge debt. It seemingly had no rate caps. Occupancy dropped from, 95% or 94% to, somewhere in the 50-ish% range. Just a really bad mix there. Very little operations going on. They had 116 code violations on just one property, the Cabo San Lucas property, if you read about that in The Real Deal. And number 2, on top of that, when you have that type of risk exposure, as far as on the interest rate side of things, and you don't have rate caps, that's not good. So you should make sure that if you are taking out a loan on, bridge debt, on floating rate debt, that there are rate caps that were purchased. So that's number 3. Number 4, is there a preferred return or is it a straight equity split? In other words, what is the structure of this deal? There's 2 main structures, and the 2 main structures you see out there for the most part, the 2 most popular structures, is a preferred return structure and a straight equity split structure. Let's go over the 2 main types. So with the preferred return structure, usually that's set up as a 7% preferred return and then 70-30 thereafter. What does that mean? That means as a limited partner, if it's a 7% preferred return, that means that you as a limited partner have to hit a 7% average annualized return over the hold period, and then anything above that Any excess profits above that then get split 70-30, with 70% going to you, the limited partner, and 30% to the general partner. That's a preferred return structure. The other structure is a straight equity split, 80-20. 80% goes to limited partner, 20% to general partner. Now, when I say 80%, 20%, 80% of what? 20% of what? Of everything. Cash flow, appreciation, things like that. So if at time of sale, the excess profit that was left over after you got your initial investment money returned to you was, let's say, 10 million bucks, 8 million would go to limited partners, and that would be spread out between them based on what their ownership percentage happens to be, and then 20% goes to the general partners in that circumstance. Now, I've invested as a limited partner in both of those structures. I don't know if I really have a preference of one over the other. Some people would say they like preferred return because, you have to hit that 7%, annualized, or the general partners really don't make much money on the deal. Others would say, I like 80-20. It gets me more of the upside in the case there is a good upside. I don't necessarily have a preference to one over the other. I think both are pretty, good, sound structures. But those are the two main structures that you do see: the preferred equity return, and then also you have the straight equity split. Next here, number 5. At the time of sale, do I get my initial capital invested back before you, the general partners, touch anything? What I basically am asking, and what I want to make sure, is that if I put $100,000 into your deal, at the time of sale, do I get returned my $100,000 that I invested into that deal before that equity split kicks in, right? If it's like that 80-20 split, just to give an example. Before that 80-20 split kicks in of the profits, do I first get my initial capital invested back? The answer better be yes. Because I want to make sure that if I gave you $100,000, when that deal sells, I get my $100,000 back, and then we split the profits above my initial capital invested. It's usually the answer is always yes in that case, but it still is a question worth asking. Number 6, I want to make sure that this general partner who's reaching out to me, and they're looking to raise equity for this deal, for the down payment, for like renovations they're planning on doing and things like that, I want to make sure they actually know the details of this property. Have you visited the property? If whoever is raising equity for a deal has not visited a property, just tune them out. Don't pay attention to them. Because if they have not visited the property, number one, they don't even know what they're asking you to invest in. Now, they see it on paper and everything like that, but you'd be shocked, and I mean shocked, how many people will ask you for money to invest in a deal without having ever seen the property in person. I mean, to me, that's a huge red flag. Number 2, furthermore, I want to know that you not only saw the property in person, I want to know that you personally shopped the comps. The area where the property is, being purchased in. As an example, like the deals that me and my partners buy for the most part are all pretty much in Dallas and Houston. Now, my 2 partners, one lives in Dallas, one lives in Houston, so they have really intimate knowledge of those markets. They know the markets better than me. But if we're buying a deal in Dallas, they'll do the initial kind of homework on the deal, and then, we'll kind of get involved in the offering process and things like that. And then if we know we're seriously involved and we're seriously being considered as buyers, then that's when I fly down there and I tour the property. And I might have already torn the property down there because I've been to, a bunch of properties in the local markets that we deal in. But even still, I'll still tour the property physically, but then I'll also shop the comps. When I say shop the comps, I mean, I want to know what the competition is surrounding our asset. If we're intending on raising rents in our business plan by, $200 per unit, well, can we substantiate that based on the nearby units? Like, is there a market for that? Because we don't want to be the first to try out something. We want to make sure that somebody else already raised rents and we're just copying what they did. So I want to make sure that if you, a general partner, are coming to me and you're looking to raise equity for a deal, that you've at the bare minimum not only been to the property itself, that should be a given, right? But number 2, you've personally shopped the comps in that area. So again, that's number 6 there. Number 7, I always ask this question: what's the number 1 concern you have with this deal? And if they tell you nothing, say there's got to be some kind of concern, right? If there is no concern with a deal, then most likely they would have never gotten it. Because if it was just such a deal that was such a slam dunk, it was a no-brainer, everybody and their mother would have been bidding over the deal. So make sure you ask them, what is the number 1 concern that you do have with this deal? And they should give you some kind of answer there. I also always ask them, kind of in regards to that, I want to see some kind of sensitivity analysis. I want to see what's our break-even occupancy. I want to see, if rent growth only hits this, what are the returns going to be? I want to see that if when we exit, the cap rates are at, let's say, 6% versus 5.5 versus 5 versus 4.5. What would the returns differ? You could be able to tell what the returns and how they're going to differ based on exit cap rates. A sensitivity analysis, in my opinion, is something really good and something that, really all general partners should be putting together for you. Number 8, this is more particular, I would say, in the southern part of the country, really the Sun Belt. Is it a chiller property or individual HVAC? So for those of you not familiar with chiller systems, I'm not going to get into the intricacies and all the little details of it, but a chiller system, just to put it bluntly, is kind of a pain in the butt to deal with. And the reason I say that is because they have to be transitioned from heating to cooling in the seasons. And in a state like Texas, let's say November. In November, you might have some days that are in the 80s, but you might have some nights that get down to the low 50s. And if you haven't transitioned over from heating to cooling, that's going to be an issue, and then you're going to have people complain. Individual HVAC is definitely preferred to have. It's not to say that I would never invest in a deal that has a chiller ever again. I just want to make sure that the general partners have allocated, really a good chunk of money towards the different repairs, because they always break. Different repairs that have to be done on those things, replacing them if you want to replace them, things like that. And really ideally, where I think a lot of money is going to be made over the next couple years is buying properties that are on chiller systems and doing a conversion to individual HVAC. Now, on a big property, on let's say a 250 unit property, that might cost $10,000 a unit. That might cost about $2.5 million bucks. But by doing so, you totally change the quality of the asset, and then also, more than likely, well, not more than likely, factually, it will trade at a lower cap rate. That's what the market shows, because buyers and really tenants in general prefer individual HVAC over chiller systems. So that's number 1. You prefer individual HVAC, but if it does have a chiller, what is their plan for making repairs to it? How much money do they have to make repairs to it? And do they plan on doing any individual HVAC conversion? Number 2, kind of in line with this same, number here. Is it a flat roof or a pitched roof? Flat roofs typically have to be replaced more often. So flat roofs, what you have with a flat roof is like in North Texas, as an example. You have a lot of hail. And hail will just bang right into that flat roof, right? And on flat roofs, water sits. They need to be repaired more often. Whereas a pitched roof, again, in heat, it still deals with some issues, but it lasts longer and also is not as large of a victim to hail as a flat roof would be. So that's another thing there. Next here, number 9. How did you come up with the property taxes on your pro forma? Your pro forma is your projections on what you're projecting. In a state like Texas, which every single year your property tax bill changes, you might buy a property, and when you bought it, the property taxes, let's say this, apartment community was $500,000. The next year it might go up to $850,000. Now, if you underwrote that whole deal, you did your financial analysis based on $500,000 in property taxes, and let's just say for round even numbers sake, the property taxes really turned out to be $800,000 in year 1. That's a $300,000 miss. But it's not just a $300,000 miss. Here's why. If you're in a 5% cap rate environment, I'm using 5% because I can do this easily in my head. 300,000 divided by a 5% cap rate would be a difference in valuation of $6 million. You would have made a $6 million mistake by not taking into consideration that property taxes were going to go up. So I always ask the general partners, hey, how did you come up with your property tax amount that you put in your projections, and who did you consult with for that? I want to make sure that they, have a realistic number that they've put out there, and, ideally, hopefully built in some cushion. Now, the unfortunate part is that towns and the cities, municipalities, you have no idea what they're moving the taxes to, and they don't really tell you. Texas is a non-disclosure state, so they don't know what you bought the property for. So they're more or less, I feel like sometimes, they're taking a guess at what you bought it for and placing a valuation on it based on millage rates and things of that sort. So hopefully you have some kind of property tax consultant where you can consult with those things. So ask them, how did you come up with your property tax amount on your projections? Next here, number 10, what does your insurance policy cover? Now, as I told you, I've invested over 5 million bucks as a limited partner into other people's syndicate deals. Now, I've also invested a bunch of money into my own syndicate deals, but in doing so, you get exposure to a lot of different things when you're invested in so many syndicates. I don't know the exact number I've invested in, but it's probably towards like 50 or so at this point. But with that being said, I was invested in a property. This was back, I want to say, I think 2016. And this property down in San Antonio, it was I think 309 units. I was a limited partner in it, passive investor. A fire happened. A fire ripped through one of the buildings on that property, 24 units, completely and totally wiped out. Now, luckily, everybody got out safe. That's concern number one. Number two, though, after everybody gets out safe, learning the process that it takes to actually rebuild that 24 unit building, what insurance is required. So, luckily, obviously, this was, not my reputation at stake, but luckily for me, I had invested with a good general partner who knew what he was doing and had really good insurance coverage. Now, part of that insurance coverage, you just think to yourself, if it burns down, you get insurance to rebuild it, right? But you need to get a lot of different things. You need debris removal insurance. I didn't know this, but if a building burns down, the insurance company might pay for you to rebuild it, but they're not going to pay for the debris removal or even demolition and stuff like that. So debris removal insurance, I didn't know you needed that. He had it. Very fortunate that I was able to learn about that during that. And, we have those on our properties. Number two, code upgrade insurance. If that building was built in the 1970s, 1980s, the construction code in the 70s and 80s is likely not the same as it is today. So you need to get code upgrade insurance because the insurance company will just say, hey, we're just giving you the money to rebuild what you had here. We don't care that it's not up to code anymore. So again, code upgrade insurance, things like that, replacement costs, and things of that sort. The other thing that I found interesting is the general partner in this deal that I invested in, they hired their own personal adjuster, because obviously the insurance company adjuster is going to want to come back with, lower proceeds for the insurance claim, whereas your adjuster is going to fight for it to be higher. And I think the cost, I want to say, on that was only, and luckily, fortunately, we've never had to deal with this on our properties as general partners because we haven't had any massive fires like that. We've had fires in like a unit or two, but not like one that ripped through an entire building. I think the adjuster cost was only like $5,000 and resulted in well into the six figures of additional insurance proceeds. So ask the general partner, what does the insurance cover? I think that's a really good question to ask. So that's number 10. Number 11, I always say, I'm not going to hold you to this, but what upside do you think there is that you haven't talked to me about? And, for instance, like right now, I think to myself, what is some additional upside that we might have at a random property that we're pursuing? To give you one example, in Texas right now, in the Texas state legislature, there's different proposals to actually, restrict how high property taxes could be raised. So if we made assumptions that our property taxes are going to go here, but they're really only going, let's say, perhaps here, that could be a good headwind for us. Like if our property tax bill only goes from 500 to 750 instead of 500 to 800, that's $50,000 savings worth of, income, right? Worth of expenses, which, results in your income. Now, $50,000 extra in income at a 5% cap rate, 50,000 divided by 5 would give us $1 million. That would be $1 million increase in value. That's one example. Another example is, maybe we're going to look into rolling out like a bulk Wi-Fi package on the property. We're going to hook ourselves up with a internet provider who, all our tenants are going to have internet anyway. And if they're going to spend, let's say, $60 a month for internet, why can't we get a piece of the action? They'll still pay the same $60, but we'll have one exclusive provider for the property. Maybe they charge us $25 per unit, and then we charge the tenant $60 total, and we collect that difference of $35. And $35 over, let's say, 100 units, it begins to add up. That's an extra $3,500 a month, which equates to an extra, $42,000 a year, which at a 5% cap rate would be an increase in value of $840,000. I'm doing the math off the top of my head, but it's somewhere in that vicinity. So again, little things like that. So ask them, what is some of the additional upside you think might exist that you haven't really spoken about? So I always ask them that question, see if there is any that they, have in mind. Really important question here, number 12. what is your relationship like with the property management company? Because the property management company, money, I always say money's made during operations. Money's made when you purchase and during operations, because how you operate the property really matters. The value of any investment property could be derived by just taking the net operating income divided by the cap rate. You, through both revenue and expense control, can affect that net operating income. The higher you drive that net operating income, the higher the valuation of the property is going to be. I want to make sure the property management company that we have on this property that I'm investing in is familiar with the area. They have experience with this type of asset, because as an example, you wouldn't want to hire like a luxury leasing staff who's used to white collar tenants working 9 to 5s in offices. You don't want to pair them on like a C-class property with tenants who, have a much lower median household income, work blue collar jobs, things like that. You want to make sure you're pairing properly. Number two, you want to make sure that they have a good local presence. Do they have vendor relationships in that area for different renovation projects that we need to do? Because one of the things we might want to do renovations wise is, small, light value add renovations. We want to put in new vinyl plank floors. Want to put in new, lighting fixtures, backsplashes, new fronts on the cabinets, new kitchen appliance package, new toilets, new vanities, reglazing the tubs, paint, what else? So, a bunch of different things. But I want to make sure that they have the vendor relationships so that we not only can do those things, but do them fast and do them efficiently. Because the longer it takes to turn these units, the longer we have vacancy, the less income we're generating on the property. So make sure the property management company that this group is hiring has experience in this area and also with this, quality and style of asset. Next here, number 13. Here's the number one question. So if you want to pause for a second and say, write this down, this is the number one question I have by far. If I'm trying to vet out a general partner that I'm considering investing in their deal, and I've never invested in one of their deals before, I would say this. It's kind of a three-part question. I would say, number one, what's the most recent deal that you did? And they say, it's XYZ, property, right? I say, great, how's it doing, XYZ property? What do you think they're going to say? They're going to say, it's doing great. We're doing quite well. I would say, awesome. When you guys bought this deal, do you do like webinars for your investors on your projections of what the deal is going to look like and things of that, financial projections? They always are going to say yes. And then I'll say to them, hey, by any chance, can I see your webinar when you were raising equity for this deal with your financial projections? And then also see your most recent monthly report on that deal to kind of see how it's doing in real time. In other words, what I want to see in real time, what did you project and what's actually happening? So that's like the strongest question that you can ask. If there's one question you can ask, I think that's the strongest one that you can ask, because that kind of answers a lot of different questions, right? It shows you what did they say they were going to do versus what actually happened. It also then shows you, have they done deals with this person before? Remember, question number one we talked about, have you ever done deals with this person? Do you know this person? If they can't show you like a deal that they've done with this, group, they might not even know who they're raising equity for. They have no experience with them. And obviously, for some people, there's going to be a first time they partner up with somebody. Like, for instance, everybody does their first deal, right? When you do your first deal, it's going to be with new partners. But, you want to make sure it's just another way of kind of vetting them out. Vetting out what the experience is, what the track record is, what the operations are like, all that kind of stuff. That's probably the number one question that I ask when I'm trying to vet out, new general partners before investing in their deal. Next here, number 14. Again, you might think this is an intrusive question, but I always ask this. Do you have family and friends investing in this deal? And they might say, yeah, I consider all my investors family and friends. And I'll say, no, I'm serious. Like, do you have actual family members investing in this deal? Like your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, your aunt, your uncle. And why do I ask this? Because here's the thing. I think, at least for me as a general partner, like my biggest fear always is, you would never want to lose anybody money. But not only do you not want to lose anybody money, you definitely don't want to lose your family members money, because your family members you're going to see for the rest of your life. You can't run away from your family members, right? You are going to see your family members at, holidays. You're going to see them, for the rest of your life at, different life events that occur, weddings, so on and so forth. If you are taking on your family's money and personal friend's money into this deal, I think it says a lot to me. I think it says to me that, hey, this person's really motivated now not to mess up this deal. Because if they mess up this deal, they're going to lose family members and close friends, not only personal money, but maybe even relationship. So that's a question I always ask. I know for some people say that's a little intrusive. It's a question I think that is worth asking, though. Next here. So, number 15. One of the ways that sometimes general partners make these deals look really good is they juice the income in some category, or they really drop the expenses in another category. I want to see if there's any like big delta between what the prior 12 months were of operations for the previous owner and what our, group is, projecting on different things. Why is there such a big gap? One of them is what's called other income. Now, other income is other income streams. Like as an example, so one of the things that we recently did on a property is we rolled out smart tech home packages, where you have like from an app, you can control your air conditioning and things like that, and lock and all that kind of stuff. And then bulk Wi-Fi. So our other income line went way up because of that. So if you looked at that and you saw that delta, you would say, "Whoa, why is other income so much higher under you guys than the previous owner?" So make sure there's some kind of explanation behind that, and they're not just juicing that to juice a deal to make the deal look better. Next here, number 16, what is your exit strategy? So you want to make sure there's some kind of exit planned. When you buy it, you want to already have the exit in mind. And when I say have the exit in mind, you want to, we always call it leave meat on the bone. You want to leave some meat on the bone for the prospective purchaser. As an example, the property that we sold recently in Arizona, it was 120 units. They were all either 2-bedroom, 1-bath, or 3-bedroom, 1-bath units. Now, in those, 4 of the units, we added half bathrooms. And on those 4 units that we added half bathrooms, each half bath that we added, we took a little bit of space out of the laundry room and added that half bath. And it only cost us, since plumbing was already there, it only cost us about $4,600 to do those. But what it did is those rents on those units with half baths rented for anywhere between $150 to $200 extra per month. So we could sell that to a prospective purchaser and say, look, there's 116 other units left to do at a cost of around, let's say, $5,000 per unit. And that will raise rents per unit, let's say $200 a month over 116 units times 12 months in the year. That's going to increase the value of the property by X amount of dollars, whatever that amount happens to be. That's an example of that there. So have the exit in mind. When are you planning on exiting? That's also important for pairing up the loan properly, right? If you're only intending on doing like a repositioning, you're buying a destabilized property, it only has 75% occupancy, it was in distress, it got foreclosed on, you're purchasing it, and what you're just trying to do is, stabilize it, renovate some units, get occupancy above 90%, and then sell it in 2 years. Bridge loan's probably best. Why? Because, again, if you sell after 2 years on a fixed rate loan, going to be a big prepayment penalty. If you sell after 2 years on a bridge loan, likely no prepayment penalty there. Again, short-term floating rate debt, no prepayment penalty. You want to make sure it is paired up there. So have the exit in mind for a number of different reasons for the purposes of selling. And, nobody's going to be able to time the market, obviously. If we could all time the market, we'd all be super rich. And, we wouldn't be here, right? We'd just be on an island sipping, margaritas all day. But, make sure that they do have some kind of exit plan in place when they first do buy the property. Next year, number 17, what percentage of 1-bedrooms does the property have? So of the total units, what percentage of them happen to be 1-bedrooms? One of the things I can tell you from experience is that 1-bedrooms are the hardest to rent. I'm not saying they don't rent. They do rent, but they're the hardest to rent, number one. Number two, they have the least amount of rent growth on them, because usually a 1-bedroom is either A, a single individual, or B, a couple. The thing is, in that 1-bedroom, if that couple has kids, they move out of there really quick. If that individual gets into a relationship with somebody else, they might say, we need more space, we want a 2-bedroom. They move out of there. 1-bedrooms have the most turnover, which means that they're vacant the most. And number two, they have the least rent growth of any of the units, whether it be 1-bedrooms, 2-bedrooms, 3-bedrooms, 4-bedrooms. 1-bedrooms are always the toughest. In my opinion, ideally, you would want to invest in a property that definitely had less than 60% 1-bedrooms. And ideally, honestly, has less than 50% 1-bedrooms. And really ideally, less than 40%. That's just tough to find though. The least amount of one bedrooms you can have on a property, the better, because usually that's going to mean you have less turnover, which results in higher collections, higher income, higher valuation of the property, so on and so forth. So, bottom line, if you do invest in a property that has, more than like 50 or 60% one bedrooms, make sure in their financial analysis they account it for the extra turnover that's going to be incurred on what's called the make ready cost of getting the unit ready to be re-rented again when a new person moves in. And number two, total collections and total income, because you're going to have a lot of vacancy there. So that's question number 17. And question number 18, last but not least, location, 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 right? Where is this property located? Is it in a good area, bad area, good schools, bad schools? Is there walkability? If I look across my portfolio of investing, of all the different deals that I've invested in, a lot of the deals that I've invested in, the best deals that I've invested in, have good walkability. When I say walkability, they're within walking distance of two main things: supermarkets and pharmacies. If there's a third thing, it would be a school as well. People with kids who live in apartments typically stay longer than people who don't have kids. Because if you have kids who are school aged and you're living in an apartment, let's say it's a 3-bedroom, you usually don't want to keep moving them between different school districts. So they usually renew at a higher rate and they stay longer. So being close to schools and walkable to schools is important. And if they're good schools, even better, right? So we have one property down in Houston that's in one of the best school districts in the whole state, and one of the top roughly 500 in the entire country. That's a property where there's a lot of kids on the property because the schools are so good there. That property also is directly across the street from a pharmacy and supermarket. So location-wise, you really can't beat that. I think it's something that could be overlooked, but I think is very important. You always say jokingly the three most important, factors of, evaluating property are location, location, and location. That really is true. So the location is super, super important. And again, the closer that you can be to schools, you can be to supermarkets and pharmacies, really important. I think a lot of times some of us often will think that, hey, we have 2 cars. Everybody must have 2 cars. It's really not the case. A lot of families only have 1 car. So being able to walk to a supermarket and walk to a pharmacy, really, really important. So anyway, guys, I wanted to make this video because I want to make sure that if people are investing into syndicate deals, you don't just have this thought that every deal is great. I'm going to make a ton of money on every single deal. That'd be great if it worked that way, but it doesn't work that way. We're in a situation right now where unfortunately there was a lot of business models that people bought properties that was just prices will go up, 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 and things of that sort, and just frankly not the truth. And I think unfortunately over the next year there's going to be a lot of people who do lose money on bad deals that they invested in. So these are 18 questions that you can ask to help protect yourself before investing into somebody's syndicate deal. These are questions that I ask myself before investing into other people's deals. So if you guys have any questions, or if you guys think there's any additional questions that I should consider before I invest in other people's deals, leave those in the comments below. And feel free to certainly reach out to me. Thank you, guys.